Hello, my name is Oscar Moreno Arias, and I am pursuing my bachelor's degree in information technology with a minor in applied linguistics at UNT Dallas.
And my name is Daisy Flores. I am pursuing my bachelor's degree in communication with a minor in applied linguistics also at UNT Dallas.
The preliminary results we are presenting today reflect the research we started during our time in Ling 4900, a course called Special Problems in Linguistics. Today we're going to be introducing you to our research on the accuracy of automated closed captioning in online linguistic lectures.
A major motivation behind this research was to focus on issues of accessibility and inclusion in education. The Americans with Disability Act is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities. We see this realization of this law in everyday life through things like wheelchair ramps outside of buildings and the use of braille in spaces like elevators. These accommodations enable individuals with disabilities to have access to the same information and opportunities that are otherwise only accessible to non-disabled individuals.
And under the ADA Civil Rights Law and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, universities are also required to provide reasonable accommodations. One way in which this is reflected in higher education is the requirement that all electronic course materials be made accessible to students with disabilities in accordance with the World Wide Web Consortium Web Content Accessibility Guidelines.
As more and more courses have moved fully online at many universities, there is a growing need to ensure that these courses are ADA accessible and inclusive. And one example of an accommodation in an online course is providing closed captioning on lectures, which in turn supports students that may have impaired hearing or a learning disability. This is where we have decided to focus our research. I mean, how many of us haven't turned on the subtitles not because we can't hear or because we can't see, but simply because we understand it better?
Another motivation behind this project is drawn from an observation I had in class where I noticed that the automated closed captioning provided by Zoom didn't quite match with what the professor was actually saying.
While we know that closed captioning lectures are a necessity for students with disabilities, the current literature also indicates that closed captioning lectures benefit every student in the classroom. Research has shown that captions on lectures support language development for students that speak English as a second language. Research also shows that captioning increases students' engagement in lectures and increases their ability to retain and recall the subject matter.
While it is clear that captioning has many benefits for students, the process of captioning a lecture is very time-consuming for faculty, which is something we learned firsthand as we embarked on this study. In fact, one 20-minute lecture can take over 3 hours to caption. Thus, faculty need to be able to rely on automated closed captioning software in order to expedite the captioning process.
In this research, we are focusing on the use of automated closed captioning in lectures. Automated captioning is produced by automatic speech recognition technology, which is the same technology that powers your Alexa or Siri. Closed captioning, on the other hand, would imply manually creating or editing closed captioning. So specifically, a professor might manually add or edit the captioning to their lecture. However, with automated closed captioning technology, the professor's speech is automatically transcribed into written text.
When I stated earlier that the captioning in my course didn't quite match with what my professor was actually saying, this is because they were relying on automated captioning. We know firsthand and also from the literature that automatic captioning software doesn't provide perfect transcripts of speech. So, for this research, we wanted to look at the impact of these errors in teaching linguistics.
Today, we are going to highlight some of our preliminary results. And while our work is not complete, we are actively working to address these two research objectives. First, we want to identify challenges with automated captioning as they relate to topics and illustrations in linguistics. For example, how does ASR technology handle the discipline technical terminology? And how does it handle illustration of language, such as phonemes and morphemes?
Secondly, we wanted to assess which ASR technology provides more accurate automated captioning for educators in linguistics, thus better facilitating the closed captioning process for faculty. We are specifically looking at YouTube's automated captioning services and Panopto's automated captioning services. For those not familiar with Panopto, it's a software service that UNT Dallas provides for faculty to use in recording, editing, and sharing their lectures with students.
To accomplish these two objectives, we collected 10 pre-recorded lectures from 2 linguistics classes at UNT Dallas. These lectures were recorded by 2 faculty members between 2019 and 2020, and only the faculty members are speaking in them. The video averaged 24.5 minutes in length. The lectures cover a variety of topics in linguistics, such as dialects, word formation, grammar, language change, and language teaching methods.
After collecting the files, we uploaded the videos to both Panopto and YouTube in order to collect the automated captioning. We then manually transcribed each lecture to produce an accurate closed captioned file.
We are presently processing the data in 2 ways. First, we are using a generic text comparison software to look at the overall similarities in the automated captioning files and the correct caption files. This tells us how similar or different the 2 transcripts are. For example, here we have an automated caption dataset where only 45.5% of it was found to be identical to the correct caption file.
We are also manually comparing the automated captions with the accurate closed captions and classifying each error as either an error related to homophones, lexical omission, lexical insertion, or lexical substitution. Homophones are words that sound the same but are spelled differently, such as for and for. Lexical omission is when a word is completely left out of the captioning. For example, we will teaching as opposed to we will be teaching. Lexical substitutions are words or phrases that the ASR has replaced with words other than what the faculty member has said, such as socio-X's as opposed to social-X. And lexical insertion is when a word is added to the captioning. For example, we will go a over as opposed to we will go over.
We are also distinguishing between generic errors and errors related to topics in linguistics. So any errors that occur in relationships to linguistic topics are further categorized as either an error of sociolinguistic, phonology, orthography, morphology, semantics, or syntax.
We now want to share with you some of our preliminary results and how these tie into our research objectives. One of which was to investigate which platform, YouTube or Panopto, provided more accurate automated captioning. And as we said earlier, we used a generic text comparison software to look at the overall accuracy of the automated captions to the corrected captions.
When we compare our Panopto automated caption to the correct caption, the automated captions were on average only 64% identical to the correct transcript. However, when we compare our YouTube captions to the same correct captions, the YouTube captions were found to be on average 88% identical. So at this time, it appears that YouTube is going to be more helpful in assisting faculty with the captioning process than Panopto.
We were also interested in identifying how automated captioning handles linguistic-specific topics and illustrations. So, while it is projected that YouTube is in general the more accurate captioning service, that general view doesn't necessarily mean it handles discipline-specific instructions very well. So, while we're still coding and annotating our data, we did want to share some of the patterns that are emerging.
The first of which is that automated captioning software struggles with phonology, and more specifically any instruction on phonemes. Naturally, the software reaches for a word or letter equivalent to the phoneme you are producing, but the captioning is not an accurate representation of the topic. We also see the same problems with morphological concepts and illustrations, where the software is unable to handle illustrations of marked speech or morphemes.
We're also finding that some discipline-specific terminology is difficult for the ASR software to recognize. The word sociolect was used roughly 6 to 8 times in 2 different lectures, and the automatic caption was never able to transcribe it correctly.
A few of the lectures incorporated words from languages other than English, and thus far the caption results are inconsistent. Sometimes the software provides the correct word, sometimes the software provides an English equivalent, and sometimes the software has no idea that you are even speaking another language.
Funny enough, while the automated captions often produce lexical and syntactic errors in the transcript, it couldn't handle lexical and syntactic errors that the professors were intentionally producing. Specifically, the professors were illustrating errors that ESL students might produce, and the ASR software would either correct the sentence or make the error worse. In this example of Carlos cutted the cake, the software was unlikely to handle the made-up word cutted, so it often substituted it with real words. This is funny because when the software couldn't handle the real word sociolect, it often substituted it with made-up words.
Right now, we are noticing that even though we are coding for several different types of errors, the dominant error tends to be in lexical substitution. By and large, we are seeing that some automatic speech recognition software performs better than others. And knowing this information allows us to point faculty in a better direction for obtaining more accurate closed captioning, which in turn will save them a lot of time in captioning their lectures.
However, it is also clear that automated captioning alone is not good enough for linguistics lectures. Our data is currently showing that a lot of meaning is lost when the captions don't accurately reflect the linguistic illustration or linguistic terminology. These types of errors certainly prevent students who are relying on the captions from having access to the materials. Thus, faculty still need to edit their automated captioning so that it accurately reflects the presented material.
Finally, we know from the literature that closed captioning promotes accessibility, inclusiveness, language learning, engagement, and retention. So we are excited to use this research to bring awareness to the value of closed captioning on online lectures. Thank you so much for joining us today.